are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte. I'm really delighted to welcome my next guest, Zuri Stanback. He is the Atlanta-based multidisciplinary artist and photographer that I've been talking about, and I'm genuinely excited for this conversation because we spend so much time on this show in the wreckage, y'all. The wreckage of the news cycle. And I really just need us to sit in something that feeds us in a different way. Zuri Stanback is, as I said, an Atlanta-based multidisciplinary artist and photographer, 2 decades in branding, marketing, and visual storytelling. And his work, it captures the richness and the complexity of Black life through photography, through film, through mixed media. Zuri, welcome to A More Perfect Union.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And so, talk to me about the difference between documenting a community and actually seeing one, because I think a lot of imagery of Black life historically, and there are other people who might agree as well, has been sort of extraction. Somebody's parachuting in, they're taking what they need, and then they leave. Your work is a little different to me. Talk to us about how you make that distinction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I try to document is focused on just what is there, but understanding what the history of what is there is, which is a weird way to say it. But, it all started with just me documenting the neighborhoods around where I live now. I've been in Atlanta since I was born, but over the past 20 odd years, I've been on the East Side, and just as on a whim during the pandemic, I had time on my hands. I went around and started documenting the neighborhoods around me. And I started to wonder, okay, what is the history of what I'm documenting? What are these neighborhoods? How did they develop? Many people may or may not know that Atlanta grew up as a railroad town. It grew up as a transportation hub. That's kind of been the story of Atlanta specifically. And so many things have been dictated by the railroads, and then eventually by the highways and interstates and how they divide communities. And a lot of what I want to do is capture what's here, help people appreciate what's here, document it in a good light. There's that fine line between documentary and fine art and creating something that's beautiful. I want to take what's there and make it beautiful. I don't want to just seek out what is beautiful architecture, what is a beautiful building, or what is a beautiful part of town. And a lot of what I'm trying to do is help people appreciate their neighborhoods, appreciate what's there, appreciate the change. Atlanta's not the only major city that's going through a lot of change, but we are going through a lot of change. I was here in '96 when the Olympics came. FIFA World Cup had a huge impact on what we've done from a development standpoint. And in between that, we've had a lot of growth in the city population, especially not just in the city limits, but in the metro Atlanta area as well. And so what I have found is that as I shoot different neighborhoods, I capture different buildings, I capture different environments. What I'm trying to capture is to appreciate what's there. And you never know when it might be gone.
You're right. You never know when it might be gone. And clearly your appreciation for not just community, but the history. I mean, it runs deep. We can feel that as you lay that out. Talk to us about your origin story. So, as a kid, did you take an interest in history, in reading, in the arts? And, you're a junior. And so, how did Zuri Senior, help to cultivate the man and artist you are today?
Well, actually, did I type that wrong? I'm actually the senior, and junior is my 19-year-old son who will soon be 20. But, to talk about my origin story. So
point taken.
So my grandfather was a photojournalist in Durham, North Carolina, and also a general photographer for the community. He was the Black photographer for the Black high schools. He was the photographer for the Black colleges in the 50s. And, there was that energy that kind of undergirded how I was raised. My father was very focused on social work. My mother was very focused on communication and how communication impacts race and class. And so the whole concept of not only history, but understanding how history influences what happens today. My father in his final years worked at a nonprofit focusing on the Legal Defense Fund in Chicago to fight redlining. And this is in the 2000s, still dealing with redlining in Chicago. And so I had those influences in my life growing up to understand the history of how we got to where we are, the history of the places we live. Although most of my life has been in Atlanta, I grew up somewhat, part of my life in Connecticut, in Hartford, Connecticut, in Amherst, Massachusetts, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My mother taught at Tulane when I was in college, and I would go to New Orleans and spend a lot of time there. My father was in Chicago, and so I not only had the experience of being taught a lot about understanding environment, understanding culture, understanding history, and the impact of race from my parents, but living it, seeing it. I went to college in Miami, which is a whole different sort of environment than what Atlanta, Georgia was in the 90s. And so that was a big culture, not shock, but impact on understanding race and environment and infrastructure. And so there's a lot of things that influence that. And what's interesting is I don't think I really recognized that until I started really focusing in on my work. You know, there was a time when it was a lot of just, I painted for a while. I did comic strips for a while. Photography really came a lot later in life, in the past 6 years. And it wasn't until I started examining my work and trying to understand, what am I trying to say? What do I want people to feel? What do I want to get across? That I also started to investigate the sources of that interest, what drove that curiosity. And I look back, and it's family and it's environment that I was raised in.
I mean, I think that's beautiful, and I think it's a reminder to all of us what might be waiting for us on the other side of curiosity. It seems like if there's anything that that you were exposed to and that was stirred up in you over the years, it sounds like a sense of curiosity because it was modeled. It was modeled by your parents. It was modeled across your family line. It sounds like. As you were talking, I was thinking about something that Nina Simone had said when she was living, that she believed that an artist's responsibility was to reflect the times. Do you feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what really sparked the projects that have come to define my photography practice. So I have two. One I call, both fall under the umbrella of what I call beaten tracks. The start of that was my examination of the impact of railroad infrastructure and neighborhoods and culture in Atlanta. I mean, it's well documented how railroads divided neighborhoods, how they became dividing lines as the city grew. Some neighborhoods were for the elite, and the neighborhoods on the other side of the tracks were for the workers, who often were Black, and if they weren't Black, they were poor. And so as I examined that, as I started to explore that, the things I was documenting were disappearing, which kind of struck not a nerve, but kind of like, okay, as I'm learning about what I'm documenting and I'm understanding the history of these neighborhoods and these areas of town and how they were changed and how they were impacted, they're changing again. And this is not new. I mean, this is, again, not necessarily a symptom just of Atlanta, but when you look at the development of the city over the years, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and the 70s were, that was the age of white flight, where everybody moved from the from the downtown areas, from inside the city limits out to the suburbs. Then you have kind of post-Olympics, post-1996 Olympics, and early 2000s, where now in-town development becomes more popular. The houses are cheap. They're historical. You can renovate them. And that starts to change the tax structure of the neighborhoods. And that starts to impact the people that live there. And then, so now you see this influx of people coming in town. And I say people, you see essentially white flight coming back. And it's constant. I mean, from the standpoint of, I can take a picture 1 week, a month, maybe a month later, that building's been torn down. And what I don't document abandoned buildings. I don't document things that are, left to decay. I am documenting existing businesses, existing structures, things that are active that people go to, the local cash checking store, the fast food, but not chain fast food restaurant because, the local grocery store is far away. But I'm documenting what exists and what is active and what people are participating in now. And to then see that disappear, just gone, fenced up, torn down. I am documenting what is current. I am documenting what is now, but very quickly is turning into history because it's being removed or replaced. So.
I mean, I'm so glad. I'm sure so many of our leaders, learners, and listeners are so glad that you are documenting the now. I think that's is critically important. One of the projects that I work on off air is the Black Land Loss Narrative Archive Project. And I was in Georgia maybe 3 weeks ago covering a story, talking to descendants that are fighting against a railroad company using eminent domain to seize part of their land, their land that's been in their family for over 100 years. And so, as we go through that process of documenting their story, we always like to ask questions about, well, what was here? What's been here? Right. And who was here? And what was their life like? What did they do? Right. Because sometimes, when we're documenting stories, we rush to document the harm or to document the grievance. And we forget to document the people as they lived.
Yeah.
And in your case, as they are living. I want to switch gears a little bit, Zuri, and I want to talk ownership with you, because, this is something that we don't discuss enough on this show, the business side of creative work. You built a career as an independent artist for 20 years. What does ownership actually mean in this economy when everybody wants your image, everybody wants your aesthetic, they want your authenticity, but very few people want to pay you what that's worth?
Yeah, it's not easy. I will say that. It does. I appreciate owning it and being responsible for what I create, independent of anything else that happens to it. And kind of what I'm getting at is, I know what I capture. I know what I document. I know what stories I'm trying to tell. And, I appreciate the people who appreciate that. And that's my audience, or that's my client base. When I do commercial work, they're coming to me for how I tell a story or how I, approach a problem that needs solving, how to help them communicate better. Again, that's a little bit of influence from the family. My mom being a communications professor for her whole career, the idea of how you share stories, how you both visually and, with the words you say come across is important. And, I think that reflects in the work I do. And it's not for everybody, but, I had to learn that lesson as an entrepreneur, independent, freelancer, whatever you want to call it, that I have I have an approach, I have a style, I have a method. I like it. I appreciate it. I'm always willing to adjust and, and think and expose myself to new ideas. But for the most part, I am who I am. I do what I do. And I'm always happy to find that audience or find those people who appreciate it. And it's worked for me. It's not going to make me rich. You're not going to, see me on a yacht with anybody. Well, I might be on a yacht with somebody, but it won't be my yacht. And, but that's okay. I have I have a great family, 3 beautiful kids, 2 of them
Yeah.
grown. One I'm trying to get out the house so my wife and I can go back to, enjoying life, as a couple. But, it's been great. But it has its challenges, but, nothing in life is guaranteed or
That's right.
perfect. And,
That's right.
I've had my struggles and trying to figure out if I'm compromising myself in some of the jobs I've done, some of the work I've done, especially when I was younger. I have a tech background. I was an engineering major in college.
I actually want you to hold that thought, because when we come forward,
Yeah,
I want to pull on that thread a little bit.
sure.
I want our leaders, learners, and listeners that are listening right now, especially young folks with camera phones and a dream, to understand something concrete.
Sure.
What's one thing that you wish someone had told you 20 years ago about building a sustainable creative career? We're going to listen for that response when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Really delighted to be in conversation with Zuri Stanback. He is an Atlanta-based multidisciplinary artist and photographer. So much so and so well known that I may have to schedule an appointment next time I'm in Atlanta, because not only is his work so amazing, but when you listen to his origin story, when you listen to his why, when you listen to the rigor around how he selects his photography subjects, it just pulls you in all the more. Zuri, right before the break, I was teeing up a question for some of our emerging leaders that are tapped in right now, young folks, perhaps with camera phones and a dream. Talk to us about what's the one thing that you wish someone had told you 20 years ago about building a sustainable creative career, specifically as a Black artist.
Oh man, it's a good question. I think the one lesson I feel like I actually learned and I followed was to keep at it. Like it's and but at the same time, don't try to corner yourself into one discipline. And probably more than anything, that is it. I kept trying to be this thing because when you're young, you're trying to figure it out. I pursued engineering as a professional career, but I'd always been into photography and art. I grew up around art. My family in North Carolina knew artists that were up and coming. Ernie Barnes was a big idol of mine. And so I always tried to maybe define myself a little too narrowly. When I was in high school and college, I was a DJ, which I think a lot of people were DJs. You love music, you get the equipment. But I mean, I remember I started really early, like 11 years old. My father bought me my first mixer and turntables. And so that was something I pursued for a long time because I loved it. And that was great. And then I decided, I'm too old for that. I graduated. I'm a professional now. I'm too old for that. And I dropped DJing for a while and came back to it and realized, this is not something I have to. It doesn't have to be an either or. You don't have to decide you're going to pursue one career, whatever that is, whether that's in a corporate job or in medicine or nonprofit. You don't have to just focus on that. You can also pursue creative activities. And it was interesting as I got older, met more people. I came across more people who worked with me in a corporate job who also did art. And then I would meet artists who also had a full-time job. And I realized, there is no either or. You can be an artist no matter what you're doing. You're an artist when you create. You're an artist when you communicate something. You're an artist when you're creating a message that you want to get across to people. It could be in written word. It could be drawing, painting. And the other thing is that you don't have to be as quote unquote perfect as someone else, right? Like, again, I mentioned Ernie Barnes as an idol of mine. Naturally what I tried to do was paint like Ernie Barnes and create like him. And what I realized, although that was good and just trying to learn brushstrokes and technique, I really had to explore what I wanted to show. I really had to open up my mind to sharing things differently. And actually, that's how I ended up in photography. I spent a long time painting and a long time in graphic design and technology, building websites. And those two things kind of came together from a storytelling and a visual experience that when I started taking pictures, I just felt like, okay, this is it. This is like real. I spent a lot of time painting, which is a reflection of what might be real. I spent a lot of time creating websites and designing digital experiences, which are great. Love technology, but that's not a real life experience. You're not interacting with people directly. You're interacting with them online. And so photography kind of brought a little bit of realness for me that I needed at the time. And again, it really all came from not trying to confine myself, not trying to say I'm this. And if I don't feel successful or happy with that, then I'm done. When you're young, you think there's a path, a set path or a set plan, or you feel like if you follow this sort of structure, you'll be fine. And then, as we know, in the world today, even in the world the last couple of decades, it never ends up quite like it was supposed to end up. The jobs don't last as long as they're supposed to. The economics don't work out like they're supposed to. And when things kind of, when you're fine, when I was fully employed and had the salary and had the health care, I certainly understood the challenges of others, but, I didn't really understand that, it can come for anybody at any time. And then when I got laid off and went full-time creative, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I can do this. It's a struggle, but it's like any other struggle. And as long as you have faith and belief in what you're doing and get joy out of it, I think you'll be fine. But that was a lot that I just threw at you. Don't confine yourself, be open, and be patient. Listen, I'm 55 years old now. It's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Oh, so, wow. 55 years old. Looks like you're 55 years old with the Keels deal. Just saying. I mean, this is why they say, Black don't crack. It really
does a little bit in this Georgia heat, but we don't crack.
That's right. So Zuri, I want to get your reaction to this. We've talked about just sort of navigating some of the changes that are inevitable in life and in career. There are a lot of people that are trying to navigate the impact that AI is having on so many different professions, so many different in so many different industries. Zuri, I want to bring you into something happening in Hollywood right now because it's directly in your lane as a visual storyteller. There's an AI generated actress. Her name is Tilly Norwood. And she's set to make her feature film debut, and Hollywood is having a full-on identity crisis over what it means for an actor. What does it even mean to be an actor anymore? As someone whose entire career is built on capturing real human presence, real Black humanity. What's your gut reaction to a synthetic performer stepping into that space?
I hate it. I mean, just in general, I get it. I play around with AI generation for images and video because I feel like I need to understand what they do, how they work. But there's just something that, the only equivalent I could maybe think about it might be animation, right? Where people voice the characters. But even then, the voice actors are bringing in, this like subtle richness of humanity to the character. And it just, there's something very uncanny valley about, AI actors and actresses. And I think it's, honestly, I don't think it's being done because they think it's a good thing. I think it's being done because they think it's going to make them more money or save them more money. And I guess if you pull out the spreadsheets and do the calculations, certainly it might be cheaper. But, there's a lot of reports out there, and I'll even say from my own experience, there's a lot of work in generating this stuff. It takes as many hours to sit up here and try to get some actor or actress, AI actor or actress to do what you need them to do, than to just hire somebody who knows how to do it and have them do it. And so what's probably more disappointing about it than anything is that it's all based on economics, and it's not based on the art. It's not based on creativity, and maybe I sound like an idealistic artist, but you would hope that there are things that are still appreciated for the humanity that's in it. And I think the arts are one of the many areas that the humanity of people is important. Politics is another area. I don't think you want AI politicians, although the ones we have probably aren't that great, but at least you can understand, a little bit about who they are and where they're from. It's disappointing. I think it is an effort to find ways to make more money than it is to create better art or to continue to create great art. You don't have to necessarily be better. You just continue to create great art. And I don't think I don't think some of the people funding these efforts are thinking about creating great art. They're just thinking about how they can make money and a profit.
I just want to pick up on that thread right there. Do you think the industry already undervalues Black actors, real Black photographers, real Black stories? Is that your experience?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's well documented, and that has a long history in America. There was a nice groundswell after during the pandemic, and there was I know a lot of Black photographers that got a lot of attention and got opportunities, and with anti-DEI president, those things started to dry up. And it just shows you that it wasn't appreciation for the people who were creating it. It was clearly just something to placate a groundswell of protest that was arising at the time. And it's sad to see. I mean, there's some really talented people out there who can create great work. But I also think there's it's a perfect storm sort of situation where you have a lot of the anti-DEI and pushing back on making sure that you have diversity in the workforce, whether that's in photography or in the arts or in corporate America. And you also have this irrational surge of what AI can do. So you have AI coming in here saying we can replace everybody. We don't need people to create videos anymore. We can just prompt it. And then you also have this backlash against giving Black voices, platforms. And so of course it's going to affect Black artists and Black creatives disproportionately. We always are impacted disproportionately when these things happen. For me, I was never probably getting the big opportunity, so to speak. I do well working with local businesses and selling my art, have a book that's coming out. So, being able to sell my work, that's how I work. So I haven't felt it as much as maybe somebody who was used to working with big brands or on big movie sets or, getting opportunities to show their work in large galleries. Those folks have, those opportunities came and then they just dropped off the face of the earth, within a year or so. As soon as November 2024 happened, it seemed like those opportunities just disappeared. And so I don't know if I felt it as much as I've seen other people that I know severely impacted. And it's not good. It's not good.
But it sounds like, the approach that you've taken, is a possibility model. Working with local businesses, working with local entrepreneurs, on telling their story in many different ways. Do you fear what happens, when it becomes even cheaper to generate sort of a synthetic substitute to all of that?
I think it's going to come, but I try not to fear it. I think that's when you talk about, again, as long as I've been doing this, I've always tried to be optimistic, but I've also recognized that challenges will come. You have to find ways to overcome those challenges. You can't predict them all. You can't necessarily be ready for all of them. But what you can be is you can be sure in who you are and what you do. And so even in the worst times, I continue to work on my craft. I continue to figure out how to at least improve on things the way I do. And I feel like when I need to work with others, that comes across. But, it's hard to say that's a path for somebody who's maybe been working on large projects, who has gotten funding for large opportunities, to say, okay, now you're going to work with smaller budgets with small businesses. Certainly that's a path. But in general, I think AI and has shrunk the market a lot. The opportunities are less. It can be more challenging. And listen, I'm in Atlanta, which is a pretty popular city for photography and entertainment. Although the movie industry isn't what it was, it still is fairly strong. People moved here for the movie industry and how it was growing in the 2010s, and so. But that started to change. What I do find is I find myself competing with, what I would call bigger names for some projects, because they're coming from the movie set working on the smaller project. I'm coming from the small project working on what's bigger for me. But I wish I had a nice rosy vision of it. I mean, there are challenges, and it is like a lot of inflection points in our history. It's changing things, and for you have to try to be prepared. The luck is the intersection of being prepared and being there, right? And so I started my first business in the mid-90s building websites. People didn't want anything to do with websites. By the 2000s, websites had changed everything. It changed commerce, changed how business was done. Then you had the iPhone come out, and then you had social networks and changed how people communicate, changed commerce, changed advertising. So there's always these inflection points that happen. And to sit back and think that, okay, I'm settled, nothing else is going to happen, that's just not going to be the world. Can you figure out what's next? Maybe. But again, being prepared, knowing who you are, being curious and open to opportunities, I think all of those things kind of help you hone in on what's next.
That's really great. It's really great. In our remaining 20 seconds, where can people go to learn more about your work and tap in?
Yeah, so my main site, Stanback.studio. That's where I have a lot of my commercial work, but I also have my book and artwork on there. And on social media, I am Zuri Stanback everywhere. Zuri Stanback on Instagram, Zuri Stanback on Twitter. I'm sorry, X. Zuri Stanback on TikTok.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate you. Zuri Stanback, come on back sometime soon. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. The quiet part out loud when we come forward.